I want to talk about an experience I had a couple of days ago where I witnessed a violent crime. I'm going to mention briefly what happened, but I want to focus mostly on how it impacted me and how I worked with that situation. So, if you live in the Asheville area, you may be aware of the fact that on Monday, and a man attacked and killed a dog. And this happened at Weaver Park. I was playing pickleball over there, and among the people that were playing was a woman that had tethered her dog just outside the fence in a shady area. And we were playing, and suddenly there was a commotion, and we looked over, and there was a man accosting this dog, holding the dog, and appeared to be punching it. So I immediately ran across the court through the gate and confronted the man and told him to leave and get away. He backed up, he looked at me, but then he slowly picked up a couple of bags he had and left. I turned and looked at the dog, and it was covered with blood. And I realized that he wasn't punching the dog, he was stabbing the dog. And as I stood over the dog, I watched it breathe its last breath, and it perished right in front of me. In the meantime, other participants in the pickleball activity came out, and a couple of the guys, one of them called the police and followed the man, and eventually he was arrested. And I turned my attention, since I couldn't help the dog, I turned to the owner, who is obviously inconsolable. And so in that moment, what I did was I compartmentalized the situation. I was focused initially on trying to get this guy away from the dog. And then secondly, trying to help the dog, which I couldn't do. And then also trying to support this woman as she was going through the loss of her beloved pet. So I stuck around, I gave a police report, and eventually came home. And I noticed that I just felt numb. You're probably familiar with trauma response of fight, flight, and freeze. And I was in a freeze response. And Margaret tried to help me by reminding me when I was home that I was safe. Because the reality of it was, when I confronted this man, I unwittingly put myself at risk. Obviously, he had a knife or some object lethal enough to mortally kill this dog. He could have attacked me, but I didn't realize that. But later, it all started sinking in, and I was not having a good day. And as much as Margaret tried to help me, I seemed to be stuck in this freeze response, had difficulty getting to sleep that night. The next morning, Tuesday, I teach yoga at Weaverville Yoga every Tuesday. So I went, and I decided, when I teach, I try to teach from present moment experience. I try to teach with something authentic rather than just make up some theme that has no relevance to my own personal life. So I shared with the class that I had gone through this experience and that I was still feeling it. And what I said was that I felt that through the class, we could move together, because I was aware of how movement and breathing can help us regulate our nervous system. And I also knew, having read Waking the Tiger by Peter Levine, which is a great book about trauma, that shaking is also a great way to help overcome the trauma response. So I informed them that we would be doing some trauma if people wanted to participate in that. Well, as I'm sharing this experience and explaining this, I suddenly burst into tears. I can actually feel it a little bit right now. And it just took me by surprise. And I kind of gathered myself and proceeded to go on. And I moved, and we did shaking, we did breathing. I really focused on inviting people to extend the exhale in the class, so that we could, that helps bring us down into the parasympathetic nervous system. So what I was trying to do is offer something out of my own experience that I felt might be helpful to others, because we've all dealt with trauma. We've all dealt with overwhelming experiences that we felt helpless in the moment. What do? We're dysregulated. How can we re-regulate, if that's a word, our nervous system? And ways to do that are movement and breathing practices. And shaking is one of the movements that's very helpful. So we went through the class, and people made some comments that they appreciated my authenticity and honesty and offered support, but which I really appreciated myself. But what was most helpful to me was actually going through that process myself. So I just want to say that because you may be able to relate. I know some of you watching these videos have gone through this. I was talking with a woman yesterday and explaining this to her, and she shared with me that she had been stabbed personally 40 years ago. When I was at the yoga class, someone there shared after the class that she had been held up at gunpoint and robbed many, many years ago. These experiences are not that uncommon, unfortunately. But even if it's not something as directly violent as getting stabbed or robbed or witnessing something like this, we all go through overwhelming experiences. So I invite you, I put a link in the description. First of all, I put two links. The first one is the report from the local news station. So if you're not familiar with what happened, you can read that. There's more details. And the second thing is I put a link to some offerings that we have that if you're interested, you can reach out to us and we can talk to you about it. If you think that we can be helpful to you using some of these techniques that I was able to use to help me address this kind of difficult experience. So anyway, I hope this is helpful to you. And if you have any comments, I'd love to hear from you. And obviously, if you like this video, give us a thumbs up. And you can subscribe because other videos come out periodically talking about these kinds of things and the work that we do. So anyway, thanks for watching.